the
Cost of the effects of good parenting.
Hey Kindra, why do you like the way your parents raised you?
Well, I can appreciate it because I've seen the way it has influenced my life today, um, and the difference in how uh, I feel about it and how I've seen other people feel about similar situations. For example, many people when I was growing up would say that, oh, I have a strict upbringing, and to a certain extent I kind of felt that way, but at the same time, it was like seeing the consequences of the things that would happen of situations they say I couldn't do. Sometimes it was quick and sometimes it took longer, but those couple of times where the consequences were quick that I saw other people experienced
Uh-huh.
for things that their parents allowed them to do and things my parents didn't allow me to do,
Uh-huh.
kind of made me think like, maybe my parents know something. Like they know. Like to me, it started looking like my parents knew the future.
Uh-huh.
But like as I got older, my dad actually told me. He was like, "Yeah, we told you those things because he's like, I saw it." He says, "I saw exactly what happened to people who did those things." He's like, "I saw it, and I did want that for you guys. So you guys maybe couldn't see it because you hadn't lived long enough." But he says, "I saw from beginning to end what happens to someone who takes that road." And he says, "And that's why I raised you guys that way." And I appreciate it because as I grow older, I also saw that road. I also understood the reasons behind the things they did. So I was appreciative.
Wow, that's awesome. So your parents did draw a boundary and said this is where you can roll, but outside of that is dangerous. And
Yeah.
as you lived your life, you saw the consequence of following um, negligent parenting and um, being benefited by being guided by your parents.
Yeah, I did.
So what are the examples of the boundaries that you're talking about?
Let's see. Um, we weren't allowed to go to parties, but we could go to birthday parties. And we could go to birthday parties. We only spent the night over people's houses, either relatives, like close relatives or close friends of the family. And even that was very far and in between, not very often. And a woman always had to be in the house. So I remember once a friend had a birthday part, had a not a birthday party. She was having a sleepover, but like her mom wasn't gonna be there. My parents were like, no, a woman should be in the house with a bunch of girls running around. And it's nothing against that person. It's just that was just something that they felt was important to keep in place. That as female and as girls in the house, there should be another adult female in the house to supervise us.
Wow, that sounds like a very good principle because Lily is pregnant with a daughter, and I've began to think about the ramification of that because every time my female student walked in, I began to see them as a daughter of somebody. So
I said it was a girl. I did say it was a girl.
yeah, so somebody said it was gonna be a girl, and she said she's been praying for us, and I guess you also somehow knew.
Yeah. I was like, because you asked, I was like, I think it's gonna be a girl. It's gonna be a girl.
I think some people just know that discernment. That's amazing. So what's the difference between regular party and birthday party?
Well, I feel like they felt that a regular party, like a party, just like a party for nothing, was it was too ambiguous, and that the purpose of the party, there was no purpose for this party. That and like truly the only purpose for the party was for a bunch of people to maybe get drunk or do crazy stuff and things like that. And it was like there, it was more of a younger thing. So I think maybe before college, they were just kind of like, no, you go to a birthday party because there's a purpose. You're there to celebrate with this person. You're gonna sing happy birthday, and for the most part, it should stay And my friend, I had good friends. Say like most part, it should stay relatively calm. Not when I say calm, I mean like clean, relatively clean because it's a birthday party.
Okay.
But like when we got older, like maybe college, because my parents they were very conscious of levels, of levels and our ages. So things I maybe couldn't do at 10, I was allowed to do a couple of years later. And then a couple of years later, and like they opened the boundary because I feel that they understood that at a certain, like they had taught me what to do, and at a certain extent, they're like, at a certain time, they're like, okay, we've already taught her. Now it's time for her to experience some of these things and to see, and for her to make her own decisions.
Wow, that's awesome. So, if you are going to have a daughter in the future, when the daughter asks you, so what do you mean by being ambiguous about the purpose of this random parties? What are you going to tell her about what kind of specifics she can possibly expect if she insists is in going there?
Well, I mean, some of the things, especially, okay, you in the Bible says, well, no, you know how a lot of times you can walk into somewhere and you just don't feel like you're a part, like it's just like you don't even feel like you belong there.
Uh huh.
When you have certain ideals and certain morals and certain,
Okay.
things in your life and certain, aspects of your life that you live by,
Uh huh.
being certain places, it wouldn't be fun for you. It's almost like it wouldn't be a fun party for you.
Oh, I
Which
see.
is, and I understood. You know what? I understood that when I got older. Because when I was old enough to go to a random party, I went to a random party, and I was like, "This is not fun." Like people were drinking and smoking and like, and I was just kind of like, "Okay, well, hmm." Well, this isn't as exciting as I thought it was going to be.
Okay. So
And
if
so, oh, go ahead.
So if your standard as a family is non-drinking, non-smoking, none of the crazy things going on, if your child goes there, your child won't be happy over there.
I mean, most likely, because if you don't do it, being around a bunch of drunk, high people is not a fun time. Like, it's just not. Like, no one wants to be what a sober person around a bunch of drunk, high people is not a good time because you're not a participant. You're a babysitter.
Oh, I see. That's true. They can't take care of themselves because they're drunk,
Yeah,
and you would
yeah.
probably have to drive them around and just drop them off or something.
Yeah, it's like, and I like salsa dancing, or I like to dance a little, but it's like I do that sober. I do that sober, so it gets so for me, um, now as an adult, I'm very particular about places I go, because it's like I'm like, oh, or like what's going on there? What are they doing? What's happening? Who's gonna be there? Because it's like I don't like just show up anywhere.
Wow, that sounds like a very interesting and very important thing that you can abide by. Know what you're going to end up doing if you're going to join any social gathering.
Yeah, I'm
So,
like, what's going on?
exactly. So, don't just sign up when you don't even know what you're signing up for.
And know your friends group, because I think that's also very important. Um, Having discernment in who you choose as your friends, I think, was very important because I believe I chose good friends that were very similar to me and my morals and my ideology and my, I chose people who were very similar to me in those aspects. So if they ask me, oh, you want to go to this, like they know what I am not going to do. Therefore, they don't ask me to go to those things. But if it's something that they know I would be interested in, they're like, oh, Kindra, you like to go? I was like, oh, what's going on? I was like, oh, it's cool. You're going to like it. I'm like, okay. Because they know me and they know my morals. Even if it's people who don't have the same morals, things as you, they should know you and understand what you consider as appropriate and not appropriate.
Wow, that's awesome. So, both your parents and you were working together to create your uh, inner
Sphere of
circle.
influence. Yeah.
Exactly, sphere of influence.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's wonderful. So what are the things that your dad allowed you to do when you grew older as you were expanding your
I want to
social?
know like
Yeah.
what around what age? Give me approximate age time.
So probably from teenage years to in transitioning to college age. What are the things that your parents say? Okay, now you can do this. What are those things?
Well, like we could date. I mean, like we weren't prohibited from dating. You know,
Okay.
we could date
Okay.
if they came up. Let's see. Trying to think because it was so they were so clean, so smooth. Trying to think of what like specifics. Let me see. We could date specifically. We could stay out later. We could stay out later.
Okay.
Okay, we could stay out later. Let's see. We had more influence over, like I said, the activities we participated in. We could decide. We were able to decide for those things more.
Oh.
Um,
Okay.
let's see. Let's see. Clothing. We were more. Uh, we have more participation in our clothing. I think because at that time your parents buy your because like I always think it's interesting when like I see little kids in certain outfits and their mom and dad is like I don't know what to do, they just dress like that, and I'm like, but you buy their clothes.
Oh.
So my parents like saying my parents bought our clothes, but but at a certain point they let us become more we had more choices in the wardrobe that we were able to buy,
Uh huh.
but it still had a limit. Like
Ah.
I couldn't buy short shorts. I could buy shorts, but they couldn't be like ridiculously short. I couldn't buy deep like they wouldn't buy me deep cleaving outfits. If I bought it myself, that's different. But they were like, if you want to buy those type of things, get a job and buy it yourself. But they weren't going to buy it for me.
Wow.
And I didn't wear those things anyways, but that was their thought process. If you have particular things you want to wear, get a job and buy it yourself because we're not buying it for you.
Wow, that's a very interesting way to transition you over to more adulthood. So they said, okay, you can date now. Okay, we can be more flexible with your curfew. Okay, you can decide certain things using your own discretion. And when in terms of buying clothing, these are the things that I think is appropriate. But if you want to go buy something else, you will have to make your own money. So
Yeah.
did you pick up a part time job to get the things that you wanted that your parents didn't allow you to do? How did that work?
Okay. So interesting enough, I never really had a huge. I never really had a disagreement with the clothing I could buy. So there was never an issue. I did get a part-time job, but it wasn't for clothes. It wasn't for clothes. It was just I wanted more money because we didn't get an allowance at a certain time. We didn't get allowance anymore. Get a job. So I didn't work part time
Oh, I see.
earlier. I worked part time much later
Okay.
than a lot of people.
Okay. So your parents did tell you when you were a teenager that you could go and do your own job, part-time job if you want to get your own stuff.
Yeah, and they were supportive. Like my older siblings, they have part time jobs, and they were supportive. My parents would pick you up and drop them off, and
Okay, so they
you know,
didn't ban you from doing any of those because I wasn't allowed to do those things. My mom told me to just study, study, study. Don't do anything else. Just study, study, study. So I think that's pretty positive.
so they like you were allowed to get a part time. We didn't have to get a part time job. It wasn't like they didn't provide us with the things we needed. It's just for the extra things we might have wanted. Like my brother wanted an Xbox. My parents were like, we just bought you a PlayStation. We're not buying you an Xbox. So he got a job. My sister, she wanted more cash. She wanted to have more cash. To like, I don't know what, I forget what she was doing at the time, but she wanted some more cash on hand. And my parents were like, all right, if we already gave you certain things, so you can go get a job if you want more.
Wow. So there were the needs were being provided, but when it comes to
Yes.
the wants, you had to do extra work to to get those things. So it sounds like your family has a really good bond. So what are the things that made your family stand out or very special and unique in terms of creating that bond and that respect and mutual yeah, interaction going on.
Well, I'm a child of six. I was raised with six siblings, and we all are either 2 or 3 years apart. We're 2 or 3 years apart. And my parents, to keep order in the house, were very much about hierarchy. There was a hierarchy. And the older you were, the higher on the hierarchy you was. So there were certain you and as younger kids, you understood that. If you were older, you got the better seat in the car. If you were older, you got more allowance. If you were older, um, there was just more privileges, but there was also more responsibility. Like if you were older, you maybe cleaned the kitchen while the younger kids cleaned the living room or the dining room or something like that. If you were older, you took out the trash. If you were younger, you might you might do something like small, like do a smaller thing. Um, if you were older, you got the seats. When we go to a room, there's 5 seats. The 5 older kids get the seat. The younger kid gets to sit on the floor. And I guess as we got, you just understood that. So there was never an argument because that was always the rule. It wasn't like you didn't know that. That was the rule.
Well, that's awesome. So it sounds like how you would run an army where there is a rank and there is a privilege and duty at the same time. So nobody questions that system.
Yeah,
So
that's actually exactly how it was. We didn't question it because that was rule.
wow, that's amazing. So did you guys go on a trip or like go on doing family things, or did you guys have any
All
special
the
family
time.
time? What are those things that
All
you
the
did?
time. We used to go to Disney World once a year together as a family, and we drove the Disney World from Ohio to Florida. We all drove in the same car, and so we were all in the car. My parents kind of make a trip out of it, so we would like stop at different restaurants and maybe see different sites, and we did it as a family. Um, yeah, me and my siblings. We were all as a family. We were all very close. Even today, we're still very close. We were
Wow.
all very close. We're very close today. We just understood that I had friends, but my best friends were my siblings.
Wow.
Like I have friends, but my best friends were my siblings. And I think that also helped a lot in school because even when I had sometimes issues in school and I felt like you have those like bullying, you have those bullying moments or you have moments where you just feel like you're left out. It wasn't too bad because it's like, oh, I'm going home to my family anyway. So forget y'all.
Wow, that's awesome because some kids when they're bullied, they either self hurt themselves or they hurt themselves or they sometimes they when it gets really bad they commit a suicide or something, but you had the protection system where you saw siblings as your best friends. And for me
Yeah.
that's something very very difficult to understand because I had my best friend somewhere else, not at home. My brother was my brother, not my best friend. So that's really awesome.
Okay,
So
yeah.
so how close are you guys? Are you guys still hanging out and checking
Oh, to this
on
day,
each
we
other?
still like my brothers at home. They still beg me and my sister to come home more. They're like, "Come home, come home." Even my dad, he was like, "Come home." We're like, "What are we gonna do?" He's like, "It's okay. We'll take care of everything. Just come home." They want us back home, and my sister is here visiting now. My brothers and actually my brothers came to visit me last about a year ago. They came to visit us before, not a year ago, about 2 years ago before Corona. They came to stay with us, and we still plan trips together. Uh, let's see, like we talk on Skype. We have like a group chat. We
Uh-huh.
have several group chats actually. They're all called like more kids chat. The squad, we call it the squad chat on Instagram. More kids on Messenger. Um, the best kids on Snapchat. Like we have chats on like pretty much every in every social media that we talk on. We send like videos to each other or something funny we saw or something interesting we saw, and then we'll talk about it. And like, yeah, we still talk all the time.
Wow, that's beautiful. So the sibling support group is still continuing and is very active and it still helps you feel like you belong somewhere even to this day.
Yeah, like to this day, like I like people always say, "Kid, you never go out," and I was like, "Why do I have to go out?" I was like, my sister, like she's at home. I go visit her. Like my sister takes me out, I'll go out with her, or like we go out and we have each other. No, no, no.
Wow, that's awesome. So you had a family trip. You're still traveling with your siblings. You're still checking on each other. You're still feeling very connected to each other. So
Yeah.
when it comes to corporal punishment, was there a time when you were disciplined? How did that work by your
Oh
parents?
yeah, my parents were very much spare the rod, spoil the child. Very much so. They were. It's not like they were ridiculous with it. I think sometimes people can go too far. They were very knowledgeable of your age range. And honestly, after a certain point, we didn't need spankings because we already understood what we could not do. So spankings, in my belief, are a younger child thing. If you spank them young, you don't have to spank them when they're older.
Wow.
I'm an adult. And even now, if someone's like, oh, Kindra, let's do this. And I'm like, no, my dad would kill me. like, like,
Oh.
like, and it's not like my parents would like actually, they wouldn't actually beat me at this point, but their disappointment is enough for me not to do something.
Wow, that's so sobering. So you still have that sense of respect and reverence to your parents, and you're saying spanking and whipping is for the younger kids, but
That's for younger kids.
because you got it at the time, you still had that healthy sense of fear to your parents. You don't want to
Yeah.
disappoint them.
And it's not like people like it's not like you beat them until the point where like it's not like you're beating them. It's like, for example, if they're like 2 years old, tap tap, two taps on the thigh is enough. Two taps on the thigh, two taps on the arm, just like two, not like beating them all over the house.
That's
like it, it's just that simple. Like when they're little, it's two taps or two swats. My dad would say, my dad, he's like, you're getting two swats, two swats, and that's it. That's how much you would get. Maybe when you're like 10 years old, you might get like 3, 4 swats. 1, 2, 3 across the booty, maybe like upper thigh area. You would get like a couple of those swats, not on your back, not on your arms, just a couple between your knees and your butt. That's where you would get it
wow.
on the back.
So the amount of whipping or patting was already defined, or was already informed, was already agreed upon. It wasn't something shocking or just astonishing, and it wasn't too overwhelming. You already knew what you're gonna get.
No, man, my parents, my dad, he was very much on telling you what you did wrong and what your punishment now is. Almost like a court system. Like it's like you were found guilty with this, and your punishment is this.
So there was a family court going on, and you didn't want to rebel because of them, but that kept you within the boundary.
Yeah, so like my parents, a lot of times, and my parents are very much about discussing it with each other. So it's like, um, so my dad would be like, okay, and another thing is like they never spanked us angry, and I always thought that was
Wow.
very they never spanked us angry. And sometimes if my parents were angry, they would put it off to another time
Wow.
so they could calm down. So like if my dad was angry, it's like let's say we did something like I don't know, like we drew on the wall. We never did that. Let's just say we did that. Say we did that. Uh, and he was angry about it. He would basically send us to bed and be like, I'm gonna take care of you guys later. And so he would send us to bed, and then eventually he would let us. And then eventually he would come back, and then he would call us to his room and be like, "Okay, didn't I tell you not to do that? Why did you do that?" And he'd be like, "Okay, so now I gotta spank you. You know that, right?" Like that's what he would say. He's like, "Now I gotta spank you. You know that, right? There's consequences to the things you do." And so then either he would tell us to go get a switch, or he would bring out a belt, and then we would get 2, 3 swats, and then sent to bed.
Wow, that's very different from the way I was punished, because my mom would call me over, and I don't know how many uh, times she was going to hit me with the stick. I had no idea. It depended on how she felt. If she felt bad that day, I would get more. And then my brother was running around because he didn't want to get any, and sometimes he didn't get any because he was running around, and I would just sit there, and she would give me all these whippings. And in your case, your parents waited until they calmed down and they asked you why. And they did hear you why you did certain things. And the punishment wasn't too much. It was just right for you to get the lesson and move on and
Yeah.
not repeat the same thing over again.
And that's what's important. It's like you're not literally trying to beat them. You're just trying to, like you said, teach them the lesson that you can't just do anything. There some things you cannot do or you're going to get in trouble. And if it honestly, it's not like we always got spankings. That wasn't always their go-to. In some situations, it was like privileges were taken away. Like, oh, you go lay down, or no, you can't go out with your friends today, or no TV today. Things like that. Sometimes so you got to know your kids because some kids spankings aren't, they'll help them. Spankings aren't beneficial to them. My older brother's a perfect example. He didn't care about spankings. He used to number his spankings. Like he was like, "Come on, we can do this." He was like, "We only gonna get like maybe like 4 spankings." He's like, "We only get like 4 swats for this." Because like I said, we kind of understood there was like a jury. So like in like court, oh, you still that's 2 to 5. That's 2 to 5 years in prison. Like we knew that in the house. Like if you do this, that's like 2 to 5 spankings. That's 2 to 5. That's what you're gonna get. So he used to like kind of think like, okay, guys, we do this. Daddy's only gonna spank us twice. We're gonna get 2 swats. So for him, my parents had to change it up a little bit, whereas they took away privileges. And for him, that was worse than a spanking. So like they would take away his Xbox, or he couldn't go out with his friends, or like they would take away privileges. And then for him, that was like, oh man, he didn't do certain things because he was like, now I won't be able to do this, that, and the other that I want to do later. And that was his thing. So it really, so another thing is know your kid. Some spankings don't work on everybody.
Wow, so kids are all different. So you need to mix things up and you need to make sure that
See what works. Yeah.
which one works.
Yeah. Mix it up. Like if you realize spanking's not working, more spankings isn't gonna help. You should find something else.
So either take away the privileges or spank, but just do it calmly and just do the right amount so they can learn the lesson and still
Yeah.
respect you and love you.
Yeah.
I heard from my wife that she got blamed for not taking care of her youngest sister. How did that dynamic work? Youngest and the oldest? Did you get blamed if something
Well,
goes
no,
wrong?
I mean, to a certain extent, it depends on what the situation was. The older siblings, we were definitely in charge of the younger siblings. So the older sibling that was there, they would, in a certain extent, they were held more responsible if something happened. So if I'm out with my 3 younger siblings, as the oldest, even to this day, I'm more aware of my surroundings and I'm just more vigilant because it's like, oh, I'm with my younger siblings. But it's very interesting when I'm with my older siblings, I'm back to like being a little kid. Like I don't care about anything because they're in charge. They're held responsible. So
Wow.
it's very interesting. So my parents, they like I said, there was a hierarchy and you have responsibilities because but the thing was, the younger siblings had to listen to you. So
Oh.
when the parents weren't there as the older sibling, the younger siblings had to listen to the older siblings. So,
Wow.
for example, if my sister had told us to do something and then we didn't do it, she's not held responsible because she was in charge and we would be the ones in trouble because we didn't
Wow.
listen.
Wow.
It didn't happen often, but yeah, it's like you would get it because like at that point, almost to the point of like my parents would give let's say what's the word for it, would give authority to the older sibling if they weren't home. So my parents left it like Meg is in charge, Meg is
Wow.
in charge. And if Meg is in charge, where if she's telling you like she's telling you to clean the kitchen or help her with something or stop doing something, you have to listen because now the authority has been given to Megan.
Wow, that sounds like a very good system. So delegated authority from the parents to the older siblings, and you become more
Yeah.
vigilant, you become more alert, and you take care of them, and you respect them. So you see, in this context, hierarchy as a good thing.
Yeah, and on top of that, if the older sibling did wrong, they would lose that privilege of authority. For example, my brother, he was older than my sister, but he lost his privilege of authority. And then my parents made her in charge of him too. So you could lose. So it wasn't like it was infallible. It wasn't like you were just like absolute power just because you're older.
Wow.
If you did not show to be responsible, if you didn't prove that you were able to handle that responsibility, it was taken from you and
Wow.
given to the next person and who's the next older person.
Well, in order to continue with your power, you had to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Like democracy mixed with hierarchy.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you didn't do right, then it was just given to somebody else, and then now you're under somebody too.
Wow. So seniority didn't take the highest place. You had to prove yourself.
Exactly.
Wow. That sounds really awesome. So, was there a time when you wanted to question your parents' authority sometimes?
Question my parent, like, out loud.
Yeah, like was there a time when you thought it was some things were not reasonable and you had to wrestle with it and you had to talk over it and they made adjustments and stuff?
I'm trying to think. Mm, Not often, because like I said, the system was very well. Like it was, they were. My parents were very consistent in keeping the system.
Wow.
So you couldn't say it was unfair because it's always been that way.
Wow.
And they were very consistent. Whether it was because like you might have like for you to say something would be unfair because you what's the word for it? You profited from the system, but then maybe something would happen and it wasn't in your favor anymore. But like that's not fair. Like for example, I remember once like we were in the car and my sister we went to go pick up my older sibling and I was in a seat and then when my sibling got in the car, it was like, oh, get in the back. And I was like, I'm already sitting here. What's the big problem? You know, I'm just get in the back seat. Just get in the back. I don't want to get in the back. You just get in the back. But then my mom was like, Kiki, you get in the back because when your younger brother was sitting there, he had to get in the back for you. So now you're sitting there and your older sister's getting in the car, so you had to get in the back for her. So it's like what was I gonna argue? Oh, next time he doesn't have to get in the back.
So the older ones sat in the front.
Yeah, the older siblings sat in the front.
Wow. So I guess they were so consistent that you didn't really want to question them all the time.
It's difficult to make an argument when you yourself profited from it.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You had that privilege.
Yeah, I had the privilege too. So it wasn't like, and even I had younger siblings who were like, it's not fair. Like my younger brother, he's like, it's not fair. I'm the youngest.
That's true.
So he's like, well, when you have nieces and nephews, you can order them around, which he does. Now he does. He has nieces and nephews that he tells what to do.
Oh, so it's not just your nuclear family alone, but it's extended family all the way around.
Yes, it is. It's extended. Like for example, with cousins or with aunts and uncles, if I'm in a room, as the youngest, if somebody older than me walks into the room, unless they say I can keep my chair, most likely I have to give up my seat, being the youngest.
Wow, that sounds really great. So I guess your parents, as siblings, had similar system going on. So it just has been handed down to your generation. So
Yeah,
how?
it's funny. Both my parents are the youngest siblings.
Oh, I see.
Both my parents are the youngest.
Oh, but they still implemented that system.
Yeah.
So is that how they also grew up?
I think so. Well, both my parents, when I say they're the youngest, they were much younger than their older siblings. So to a certain extent, like their older siblings kind of raised them. Like my dad's older siblings are like 20 years older than him. His mother had him when she was very late in age.
Oh.
And similar to my mom, my grandmother, my mom's side had her and her sister later. My mom's a twin, so had her and her sister later. So their older siblings are much older than them.
Wow. So I guess that sibling bond was much stronger than other families because they raised each other.
Yeah, they're old. Like my dad and his older sibling, his last sister, they're so close. It's kind of funny. Like even to this day, she's like, I'd like, ooh, you gonna be in trouble, daddy. I'm Boosie.
So there is still a hierarchy going on up there.
Yeah, it's respectful, because they're adults now. It's a respectful hierarchy, but it's like, you do it out of respect. You don't do it because you have to. You do it because you
Wow,
love them. It's respect, out of respect.
that's really beautiful because I don't really have that a lot of those things going on. So to me, it sounds like a novel, or sounds like a story that is so ideal. But I guess it really wonderfully worked.
Yeah, me and my siblings are very close. Of course we had our fights. Like as any siblings would. We had our fights. It was very far in between. I might have fought with my older sister twice in like our 20 or so years of our 20 or 30 or so years of being together. Um, yeah, we didn't fight often. We were very and like we have similar likes and dislikes. We like the same humor. We like the same food. We like the same movies. Like the same clothing. We like the same. Just in general, we like the same things. So we're just very close to each other.
Wow, that's awesome. So did you see your parents modeling smooth conflict management? Because I didn't really see that growing up. There were a lot of conflict between my parents, and they weren't really like so nasty to each other to the extent that I was disgusted with them, but I just saw that it was quite a bit. So did you see that working pretty good?
Well, I mean, our parents they did argue. They tried their best not to argue in front of us.
Wow,
You know,
really?
that's one thing they did. They tried their best not to argue in front of us. Um, Interestingly enough, sometimes, like I said, like almost like a jury in the house, they would like see like, okay, as we got older, they would like ask our opinions. Like, okay, is your mom being unreasonable? Like, is your dad being unreasonable? Is your dad being unreasonable, or am I being unreasonable? Like, they want the outside looking in view. I'm like, I don't know, mom. What did you say? And she was like, I did this, that, and the other. I was like, well, I mean, dad doesn't like that. She's like, well, I mean, or my dad would say, your mom is doing this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, dad, like, why would you do that then? And then you know what? And I'm like, yeah, you should have done that. And then they'd be like, all right, maybe you're right.
Wow. So your parents did not disagree with each other in front of you, or did not get into the debate in front of you. They did it somewhere else if they had those issues, and also they
Or
you
they
know
tried,
they tried. And
yeah.
they, and
I'm saying my little sister, she was saying like she doesn't remember seeing our parents argue in front of her until she was in high school.
wow.
It's true. Like when we were very little, they did not argue in front of us, or they tried their best not to. And even if they were like in a disagreement in front of us, they tried to keep their voices,
Down.
calm.
Calm.
So like we didn't necessarily know if they were arguing or not.
Wow, that's
But like I said,
really amazing.
when we got older, they wouldn't quote unquote like fight argue, but they would have a disagreement, and then they would ask us our opinion on the disagreement.
Oh, I see. I guess when you were younger, they didn't really take you as juries, but when you got older and mature, they pretty much asked for your help in that sense.
Yeah, like what? Like, am I being unreasonable, or was I wrong? And I'm like, maybe a little bit.
But they were humble enough to even to listen to you guys.
Yeah, like to this day, sometimes my dad calls me and is like, Kiki, you don't believe what your mom did today. Like my dad would call me and say, "You don't believe what your mom did." And I'm like, what she do, Dad? What happened? What happened? And he'll tell me the story. I'm like, yeah, Dad, man, mommy shouldn't have done that. Mommy shouldn't have. I'll call her. I'll call her and talk to her.
Wow. So your parents didn't assume the infallible authority figure. They're still good listeners.
When we were younger, they were infallible.
Oh, when you're younger. Okay.
Yeah, when we were young, when we were little, they were infallible because they had to be.
Oh,
They
I see.
had to be infallible because as a
Wow.
child, you need to have an infallible figure in front of you to
Wow.
to help you through life.
I see. I see.
When we got older, like when we got older, they weren't as infallible. They listen. They were when we got older. We were able to voice our opinions, and they would listen and, like you said, change according to maybe some of the things we would say.
Wow.
Because at that point, they trusted us to have enough sense to give good sense.
Wow. Man, I'm learning so much from your family because I've never heard anything like this actually from many families. So it just sounds like the Bible story or something, or like Confucius story or something.
Confusion. My parents weren't perfect, and I will definitely. I'm the first to vouch that they weren't perfect, but I always saw them doing the best. They always did the best they could, and they never. Like one thing I can always remember, they never did something that they told us we weren't allowed to do. They would never do things that they told us we shouldn't do or
Oh,
weren't allowed to do.
they modeled it.
They modeled it, even if it was something new. Cause like I know, like they when we grew up vegetarian, but my parents weren't always vegetarian. But
Oh,
when they found out about, then they got more knowledgeable on health, they decided to become vegetarian. My parents were the first to be a vegetarian. They did it first.
wow, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. My sister just reminded me, and our mother, she actually admitted later in life, she was like it was very difficult for her to stop eating meat. But the thing was that she told us that she probably didn't stop until we were maybe in high school, like officially stopped until we were in high school. But we had no idea. We had no
Wow,
idea that that was the case.
wow.
So like,
So you didn't see
yeah,
them.
she didn't want to be a stumbling block to us. So she was like, as I was struggling, I did my best not to let you guys see.
Wow. So hypocrisy didn't keep you from disrespect your parents. The modeling was there, so you just didn't question whatever they were saying.
And it was funny if hypocrisy did come up, they would change it. They would change it. And I'm like, but Dad, you did it. He was like, all right, y'all have to do it one time, and then no one's doing it.
Oh, I see. So they did
Or
it.
he was, or if it was bad, like, or he would just be like, or if the hypocrisy did come up, they would apologize.
Wow.
They would just be like, you know what, you're right. I shouldn't have done that. I said that we weren't going to do it, and then I did it, and I'm wrong.
Wow. So
Yeah,
you heard
yeah.
genuine, heartfelt apologies from your parents often?
Yeah, but not. I mean, they didn't have to apologize too like often, but it's like
Every
if
time,
there was,
yeah.
yeah, if there was a thing that if my parents needed to apologize, they would apologize. Like if they
Wow.
were wrong about a situation or they were mistaken about a situation, they would apologize.
Yeah, I guess I heard it later on in my life, but not earlier. Because the way my mom educated me was by fault finding with other people. Look at what they did. They fell apart, or they say, "Hey, your mommy is better than everybody else." So I thought she was like impeccable. I thought she was perfect because her narrative was, "Your mommy is doing this, other people are doing this." So I thought it was she was just perfect, but later realized she wasn't.
I mean, our parent. I think as I got older, because your first God is your parents. It's just true. Your first God
Yeah.
is your parents, and then it's your parents' responsibility to shift. Like I said they would give responsibility to the older sibling.
Uh-huh.
It's the same way in a sense that they shift responsibility to God
Yeah.
in terms of who your God is.
Uh-huh.
So so like my parents were very much they tried their best to emulate to us that that they were doing the best that they could.
Uh-huh.
And if they saw there was something wrong, they would try to adjust it or try to fix the situation to like do better in that situation or
Uh-huh.
in that scenario. And I think another thing our parents are very much about is that to me growing up, my dad was the strongest and most dependable person. My mom was the smartest person. My mom was the smartest person growing up. My dad was the strongest and most dependable. So to
Wow.
me, my mom knew everything. Growing up, my mom knew everything. There was nothing she didn't know. She knew everything. So And to me, my dad was the most dependable person I knew. For example, anytime there was an issue, I knew if I called my dad, he would be there in 10 minutes, no matter where I was. If I
Wow.
called my dad, he was showing up and he was taking care of the situation.
Wow. That's awesome. Your dad was valuable, dependable, helpful, and your mom was knowledgeable, teaching you things, and they were always there for you.
Yeah, like my dad was like always like even now I'm like sometimes I put in certain situations I'm like I'm gonna tell my dad. I'm telling my
Wow.
dad.
That's a very good sense of
And
comfort.
in terms of self worth, my dad was very much about like even I won't say me and my sisters are vain. I'll say me and my sisters are very confident, and I feel like my parents and siblings had a lot to do with it because my dad would always say how beautiful his daughters were,
Wow.
and he would always say how beautiful my mom was. To
Wow.
me, the most beautiful woman to my dad was my mom. My
Wow.
dad was always that was like he was like, "Whoa, look at her! Go ahead with your bad self, girl."
Wow, that's wonderful. So the self worth of daughters came from a
My
husband,
father.
your father,
Yeah.
that recognizes his wife as someone the most beautiful he can possibly find.
Yeah, y'all look just like your mama. And that was a compliment.
Wow,
So like
that's
my dad was very much about like with us as daughters. Like I'm very close to my father. And he was very much like, oh, you guys are so beautiful, you're so smart. Don't let no boy tell you nothing different. Um and it's interesting, like I know some people aren't very like I guess you can say my dad was my dad was a very like huggy kind of person. My dad, he would always shower us with love and affection, hugs, kisses, carry us around. Like my dad was a very affectionate man to us. So it's
wow.
like I think sometimes people don't have that affection from a man,
Uh huh.
and like you say a pure loving affection
Uh
from
huh.
like a father,
Uh huh.
and it's like they look for it in other people or other men.
Uh huh.
Sometimes that girls look for that, but like to me, it's like I got hugged and kissed by my father all the time.
Wow. So
And it's like sometimes people like, oh, that's weird. I'm like, it's not weird. He's my dad. And I think
wow.
some dads shy away from it because of like the narrative that's out there, like, oh, you shouldn't be that closely with your daughters. I'm like, no, like he's my father. Like, why y'all being weird? You're weird. Like
wow.
you're being weird. Like my dad, even now, my dad kisses me on the cheek or the forehead and hugs me. You know,
That's
I love
powerful.
my daddy.
That's
I love my dad.
That's powerful. Yeah, that's true. Girls seek attention from other men because sometimes they don't get it from their daddies, and daddies shouldn't be afraid of expressing their affection to his daughters.
At all. And it was the same with my brothers. My brothers saw the example of my father. My brothers were very doting. My brothers were very doting on us as siblings, as sisters. My brothers are very doting to their sisters in the sense like they, of course they joke with us. Like I joked to my brother one time. He was like, "Get off me, baby hippo," but it's a joke, and I know it's a joke because we joke with each other all the time. But it's like I know my brothers think I'm beautiful.
wow.
My brothers think I'm beautiful. I think they know. I know my brothers think I'm smart.
Wow.
It's like they're very doting to us as sisters, and we do the same to our brothers. Like my brothers are handsome. My brothers are smart.
Wow. So you respected each other, you admired each other, you approved each other, complimented each other, and it was there. Security.
Yeah, and we also cracked on each other, but that's all in fun, in love,
Wow, that's
all
awesome.
in love.
Wow. You did joke around, but you didn't undermine them.
Yeah, like we joked around, but it was just that. It was a joke, and we understood that they weren't. This was in no sense being serious.
Wow, that's so powerful. Wow, this is very helpful. Um, I mean, I was enjoying learning different things from you and Megan when we were hiking together. But as I am interviewing you, I feel like it's just hitting more home to me. So I have the last question for you. Is there anything that you would like to do differently than your parents when you become a mother?
Differently. I will say I would try to be. I think one thing differently is money management. but not that my parents were bad with money. It's just that in a lot of ways, like our parents, my parents are very caring of us. So my mom, like to this day, my mom does all of our taxes. Me and
Oh.
my siblings. She does all of our taxes. I have no idea how to do my taxes. None. I have none whatsoever. How to do my
Wow.
taxes, or like how to make like a doctor's appointment, or how to like there were certain things like I didn't know how to do because even as an adult, my parents would do it for me. So like if I had a doctor's appointment, my mom would, make the doctor's appointment for me or dentist appointment for me. Or she would like fill out my insurance or fill out my FAFSA, my for college, like my loans. Like my mom like took care of like my loans and like she took care like my mom took care of these things. Or when it came to like things outside of that and like terms of connections and like that, my dad took care of those. Like he was the one that would like connect us with certain people uh, or how to or like, doing certain things, and they would do it for us. Not that I'm not that I don't not I appreciate it, like I appreciate it, but I felt like they did it so like now I don't really know how to do it. So I wish they might, and like they're open to teaching me now, but I'm like, oh no, just keep doing it, it's fine. But I think I would maybe teach my kids, and that's the only in like their later years is try to teach my kids, um, more in those aspects. Like I don't know how to like, and not that I don't know, but I didn't know how to like, how would I get out a mortgage or open a bank account? And like those are things I did much later myself. Whereas earlier, my parents would do those, my mom would do those things for me.
Wow. So they were very involved in your life when it comes to making different appointments, filing taxes, and all these different things, filling out the forms, and
Like quote
connect
unquote adult things.
adult things. Exactly, the things
Yeah.
that adults are
Like
supposed to do
yeah,
on their
like
own.
things I guess you're supposed to do alone. Like I like people like, yeah, I do it myself. I'm like, you do that? My mom does mine.
Oh, I see. So when you become a mother, you would have them do them on their own, independently.
I wouldn't have them do it on their own, but I would let them know how to do it.
Oh, I
Because
see.
sometimes, like I said, I have six siblings.
Yeah.
So if I need my mom to do something, I might be put on hold
Yeah.
because my two other siblings are having her do it.
Oh, I see.
Like I want it now, but she's working on my older
Oh,
sister, and my brother's thing.
she can be too
So if
occupied.
I knew, so if I knew how to do it myself, I could just do it now. But I
Oh,
have to
I
be
see.
put on hold.
Oh, I see. I see. Wow. Thank you so much, Kindra. I was very blessed to learn from you about how you were raised, and I think your parents have done a wonderful job in raising you, and you sound like a very happy person, and your siblings also, and I'm very I'm, I'm very inspired by your stories, and
Glad to be inspiring.
I'm I'm so awed at all the things that you said.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, I'll probably and I was also very amused by your radio anchor stuff that you did at the Hanok village.
Oh yeah.
You sounded very professional over there.
Try to be. Try to be.
Yeah, I'll probably catch up with you again, or probably can hang out again.
Yeah. Of
And
course.
hope you have a great day with your siblings, and I thank all the siblings right there rooting for you as you're interviewing and providing additional information detail.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for having me.
Yep. Have a good day, Kindra.
You too. Have a good day.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye bye.